I close the video for now and the sound, and So, hello. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, cool. Wait one more minute.
Yeah, of course.
I'll do the announcement and stuff.
Yeah. But I'm wondering if I do share my screen and present in full screen mode, how that will work. But I noticed some people did it very well, but usually I don't share full presentations with Jitsi. But let me just pick this one. We'll see.
Okay, so welcome, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of LibreOffice Conference 2021. And let me start with a quick announcement. So we have this LibreCon Social Jitsi room, that's LibreCon Social one word. And if you want to hang out there for like chit chat or just double check that your mic your mic setup is right, and I think you can just come out there. And but aside from that room, there is very little reason to use Jitsi in the first place. And I want to remind viewers that the preferred way to attend a conference is to follow our stream. And you do that by on the conference.libreoffice.org site, click on live stream, and you can stream. You can watch the stream from our website, so you can watch it from YouTube. And Jitsi is only to be used as a fallback. I also want to remind viewers that you can ask questions to the speaker at #LibreCon-room1. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. So we have IRC, Matrix, and Telegram channels, which are bridged, and I will monitor activity there during the session and relay question to the speaker when it's time for the Q&A session at the end of the talk. And again, you don't need to be on Jitsi to join or participate and ask questions. You can do that also from the stream using the aforementioned chat. And either way, even if you're on Jitsi, please stay quiet and don't use the chat. This Jitsi chat is only a place for me to poke the speaker and let them know how much time they have left and things. So please do not ask questions on the Jitsi chat. Thank you. And with that being said, let me hand over to Ko from Collaborate Productivity and Nows and Off. Will tell us about what happened on the Collabor Online front in the past year.
Yes, thanks for the introduction, Guillaume, and great to hear what all the details, how neatly this is organized, and all the possibilities people have to join, ask questions, and so on. So let me see. I'm now running the presentation. Do you see it in full screen now?
It's perfect.
Good. I don't see anything of what happens in Jitsi, but that's fine. A year of cool. Collabora Online, and of course, some details about mobile. I'm Cornau's marketing lead at Collabora. And we are going to show you some things about the good stuff in Collabora Online last year. Of course, Collabora Productivity, I think it's well known, already introduced last year. It's really about dedication to open source and bringing the goodness to the business world, organizations, that they are possible to invest some of their money in good free software. That's about us. And when I talk about Collabora Online, a lot has been done by the community around Collabora Online in usability, user interface, file support, performance, features, etc., etc. And let's see how much I can show of all that goodness. First, the usability and the user interface. A lot of details have been done to make it really look smoothly and attractive, easy to find. It's when you talk about the rendering, although this image doesn't show it, but the rendering of spreadsheets, details in text files, where borders are, areas start and end, in interfaces, in buttons, in pop-ups, in sidebars, all has been continuously improved, and it shows, I think. Another major new feature of the last year has been the notebook bar user interface choices. There's more choices, and a lot of tabs, a lot of clean, easy to use buttons, menus. And as you can see at the bottom, it shows that it's also by double clicking on the tab, the whole notebook bar collapses, giving the user more space to work actually in the file. It's not only that we have the notebook bar, but the classic mode. So the simple menu and the icons, it is retained, and it can be it is configurable, and it can be turned on by default. There is some noise going on here, or somewhere. File support and interoperability. Epub export in Writer is new. So Epub has been added to the files recently, to Writer recently, and now you can also export online to Epub. ODF 1.3, it's new. It has a wide support, and of course also in Collabora Online. New feature is to export to CSV files in Calc. Importing is already possible for some time with a great dialog with a lot of choices to set all the import settings you need, but export is possible now too. Then, of course, talking about interoperability, PowerPoint is one of the spear points. So in Impress, PowerPoint, we talk about headers and footers, we talk about smart art graphics, we talk about shapes, all kind of goodness that has been improved the last year. And of course, when you look to interoperability, it also means that often there is a user interface component that has been added to make working possible with new features. This is another one done by Gilsa, custom geometry effects, so that it's really imported as it is created in some other software. Then performance. There's a really lot to say about it. Yesterday Noel talked about it, and in half an hour Micah will talk about it. And it's on server side, but it's also faster work in the browser in JavaScript. And for example, your spreadsheets get faster and your notebook bar will be loaded faster. More on that in half an hour. Here is just some nice graphs showing how much improvement can be done by some testing and tooling. Then talking about features in Writer, there's a whole lot of features improved there. One of the things, for example, drop-down list in form fields. We all know the form fields. It is a sort of historic, how how do you say, artifact or something. It exists for a long time, but it's still in use. And it is wonderful that you can use it online now as well. Gutter margins, I think this has been mentioned recently. This means that in writer documents, you can easily choose to set a gutter position, which is very, very handsome for printing. Then one of my favorite new features of the last year is the full control of the anchoring of images and text flow, images and shapes. As you know, Collabora Online is outstanding. It's marvelous how it handles the images online, how you can move them, how it's fully WYSIWYG. It's easy to handle, and that has even been improved now with the context menu to set anchor, to set wrapping, and to arrange all shapes and images. And you can also see the anchoring now. It's one of my favorite features, of course, since I love to work with images. And then calc. There's been major improvements in calc as well. Here you see freeze panes. So when you have a large spreadsheet, thousands of rows, you will be happy to set the first 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, whatever, to freeze those and to be able to work in a very easy way to understand where you are looking at. It has been enabled in online the last year. With larger spreadsheets, there are more sheets, and you want to move them, copy them, rename them, etc. And this slide is showing you the great user interface that has been improved, looks marvelous, and is very easy to use. Talking about spreadsheet, larger spreadsheets, obviously in data sets we need pivot tables. And the pivot tables were already present for some time, but there were strong limits, or there were real limits in what you could do with pivot tables. Now it's easier to either create them and to customize the pivot tables. And as you see with these screenshots, it's really every dialog, every choice, every sub-choice, etc. In every detail, you can handle pivot tables online. Or maybe I should say in nearly every table, but I haven't seen anything that doesn't work. Then another thing, defining range just in online. In spreadsheets, range names are important. And the good thing is that this also allows, in the correct dialog, when you find that, to use print ranges in online. And print ranges is not only to send it to that printer, but you all know that it also helps to do a good PDF file. So print ranges online, I think it's one of the outstanding distinctive features of Collabora Online again. Then charts. I mentioned them in Calc, but obviously you have charts in Writer and you have them in Impress, etc. And the sidebar allows you to make a lot of changes in titles, in all the settings. It's easy to use, and this has been brought to mobile phones as well. More goodness for Calc. There's a whole set of analyzers, statistical tools that has been brought in Dialog to online. And then let's flow to Impress. Tables have been improved, more powerful, easier to use, also including shadows. Headers and footers have been extended, more easy to use, and more details. Smart art graphics, already mentioned that. And there's also the improved viewing of presentations and also the handling of slides. In the sidebar, in the slides pane on the left, you can easily scroll through all the slides now. Then another tool is Draw, and people who know LibreOffice well know that it's strongly connected with Impress. A lot of the features and the interface is shared, but as such, it was not present online because, of course, it needs a lot of extra user interface elements. But that has been realized the last year. Here's an overview of Draw with some various sheets in one file. And Draw is obviously for technical drawings, posters, brochures, etc., vector graphics. It's one of my favorite, again, a very favorite tool. Must have to do with the images. And of course, when you want to use Draw, you are happy that you can make drawings with connectors, for example. So there has been made a whole lot of connectors available. And since we talk about an Office suite that allows us to work consistently, all these connectors also are available in Writer and Calc. And drawing online, we mentioned Fontwork. It's an old tool, still popular to make nice, funny, wavy and complex texts. It has been brought to online. It is visible in the sidebar, the tooling to work with it, the settings. It has been brought to mobile devices, and it's not only in Draw, it's also in Writer and in Impress that you can, and in Calc that you can use Fontwork now. Then there's some various. Hey, what I said, Fontwork is not Draw only, it's also in Writer, Calc, and Impress. Very well said. Then we have the PDF Search and Annotations. It's not only that you can create PDF files in Collabora Online, but you also are able to do search and now add annotations to PDF files. So this allows you to collaborate on PDF files that you have uploaded somewhere in your share online, and with Collabora Online, it's now possible to actually collaborate on those. Another feature that is interesting, and I guess not all sysadmins are happy with it to allow it, but it's VBA star basic macros are available in online. As I said, it's not something that all people will allow you to use, all sysadmins, so clearly it has been disabled by default. And the administrator, he can enable and obviously set the security level. But it works. It allows you to run, to open a dialog, run macros, etc. Of course, the whole interface options and because of the nature of the online application, it's not possible to have, how should I say, all automating that you can have on a desktop. So it is really good to use it for macros that are designed to run on the spreadsheet, in this case in online. But it does work, and it is useful for tasks that are, well, nasty to do and need to be done more and more often. You could have macros for that. PDF scrolling. So large PDF files, scroll through them continuously without having to click or press page down again and again. And I think there's even more news, multiple slide selection in the slide pane, tabs on and stuff on rulers, tables in Writer and Impress from the menu now, shape wrapping to the background, date formats in Calc. It's more and more. And then I think I've one or two things to show on the integration on the server side, but that's really for people who work on the integration of Collabora Online. This shows you that there is the possibility to do some settings there to create the environment to show it as you will would like to have it. So here is basically the same file, but with some changes in the integration. And then coming to the last slide gradually, here's something about mobile devices. The mobile phone updates, page panel setup has been added, tab stops, word count, page setup on phones as well, table dialogues from the menu on tablets. There's a lot of effort put continuously in improving the interface for Android and iOS, and it's fun to see that it works both ways, or let me even say three ways. Sometimes stuff needs to be improved on a mobile device, and it means that some basic improvements have to be made in online, which may result in improvements that need to be made in LibreOffice Core. So there's a chain of changes sometimes that results in more goodness left and right. There's a notebook bar, that's something that's not good, but a notebook bar on tablets, CJK font support, dark modes, opening passwords. Well, dark mode, it's initially to see how it works, but we're clearly not done. Pivot tables, faster document handling. And one of the important announcements of last year was the Chromebook support. Obviously important for students, schools to have control over their files, their privacy, not to depend on the use of Google or Microsoft, but giving them freedom of choice. It's affordable, and it provides a really rich interface. A lot of things that people can do, and it's an excellent file support. As you know, the number of the amount of files and the way it is handled in LibreOffice and Collabora Online, it's outstanding. So it's good to celebrate that. And while we are celebrating, this is a nice picture from, I think it was from Spain, Almeria, the conference, with a large part of the team and partners and volunteers. That's shown here. And I think we all look forward to meet you in person the next year. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your support. And please let me know if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Cole. Yeah, I can only echo the slide before last. Looking forward to meeting in person again. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we have about 7.5 minutes left for questions. So please, I don't see any question on the chat. So if you have any question, please leave them at #librecon-room1. Maybe I can jump in and
it all shows clear, one would say.
Yeah, I must say I mean it's quite impressive, like how all shiny, and I mean I see a lot of changes, and yeah, that's quite impressive. That's quite cool.
Yeah,
thanks for that.
Good to hear.
Maybe one naive questions was about this security level that you were talking about. I didn't write down the slide number, but
about the VBA macro support. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Can you expand a bit on that? Like, what is it? Is it that I mean, people just want to kind of have better defense in depth, and they don't want to activate like arbitrary code or like things that might be buggy, or
because I didn't get your full question, but about the security level, it is the same as yeah, it must be the same as you have in the desktop application, and it clearly should be that it's about trusted macros in
right.
etc. Yeah. You don't want people to have run random macros in an online application. Although we didn't tell something about that now, but if you look at the whole architecture of the online application, there's quite some security and safety goodness around it. It's not just random, but
yeah,
but still, you don't want random code to be executed.
yeah,
So,
I see.
yeah.
But this is why I was asking a question, because I
Yeah.
remember you showing that you already have pretty good isolation between the LO4 kit processes and the different how the thing interact with each other, like several layers of isolation there. So okay, but yeah, so that's one more thing to tweak then. Okay. I have 5 minutes left. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question?
No. That's all. Okay, then.
Then I will just have a quick 5-minute break and come back in 5 minutes, 4.5. Thank you very much, Cole.
My pleasure. Thanks all.
Could you please unshare your screen, Cole? I think it's still on. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sorry for that.
No problem.
Hello, Glenn. Can you hear me?
Hi, Michael. Yes, perfectly.
Look, can you see me?
Good. I can see you and I can see the screen. That's good. Looks
Even
good.
better. Fantastic. Right, I'll shut up again, but I'm just ready so that, when you're ready, I am. Perfect.
2 minutes. Okay, it's time for the second session of this day, the second day of LibreOffice Conference 2021. And after, it's another talk about Collabora Online. So Core told us about like a summary of what happened last year, and Michael will talk most like specifically about performance improvement. And this is again an online, a live talk. So I will just shut up and hand over to Michael. But first, I want to say that, yeah, please don't use the Jitsi chat to ask questions, and please use #LibreCon, #LibreCon-room1 on Telegram, IRC, and Matrix to ask questions, and I will relay them to Michael at the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks,
Over
Guillaume.
to you, Michael.
Wonderful. Hopefully you can hear me. Excellent. This is what I'm going to say. So let me not tell you that. Let's get straight into it. So I think we've done a huge amount of work on performance in Collabora Online in the last year, and it'd just be great to show you some of the things there. But to do that, we need to understand really how it's working. So of course, we build on the LibreOffice technology. So on the server, we have effectively a LibreOffice in a box, and we were talking about the secure containment of that earlier. It's very locked down box, but it's running there, and that then streams tiles to the client as PNG images with various smarts around that. And the kit behaves in a different way to a normal LibreOffice. So it's essentially fully zoomed out. So you see a view you never see on your normal PC unless you have a very small document. There's a view of this giant document there. And that's very important so we can track when things change because we cache a lot of things on the client to make it much more responsive. So yeah, and then of course there are multiple views of that, which is very similar to creating a new window. So in LibreOffice, you can create multiple windows of your current document and get multiple views on it. And we essentially reuse that code with a number of changes and improvements around that, all of which is built into the core. On top of that, then we have a daemon that multiplexes messages from all of the users to many of these isolated kits. And there's another source of performance problems there, potentially. And so messages are sent from the kit, the web service daemon, to sometimes a proxy, and then to the actual browser on the other end. So useful to see how that works. And then, of course, in the browser, we have a relatively thin piece of JavaScript, not too much going on there, but we do lots of things to try and make things quicker. So we have overlays for cursors, so your cursor blinking is not causing any bandwidth, to be used or wasted. Your selections or overlays there. As you pan and zoom, we interpolate on the client, so you get a very fluid, smooth experience there. So that's in JavaScript. You'll realize it's a garbage collected language for almost everything, which means that the people that write JavaScript forget that you need to free stuff. And so the few things that aren't garbage collected, like timers, they typically leak horribly. So, they create a timer that's got a period of 10 milliseconds or something, 50 milliseconds, and they just leave it running forever. And so often it's a very common experience as you use the web that, the CPU of your browser process goes up and up and up until it, your laptop just sits there warming the room. And think what carbon we could save if timers actually completed properly everywhere and so on. So we don't have big problems in Collabora Online around that now. I guess many of us are used to freeing things, having created them from a C++ world. But certainly some of the integrations that we sit inside have embarrassing leaks of this kind. I'm not primarily talking about battery power and so on. I'm fundamentally talking about responsiveness and so on. So let's look at the stuff that's actually happening in the LibreOffice core. I think I talked about this before, and one of the typical test methodologies of our users is to load a document with 8 people in it and then just hammer the keyboard, with 2 flippers. And it turns out that you can do this, 10 times faster than a normal average typist. Now, to be fair, I can type, about 3 times as slow as just mashing the keyboard randomly. But arguably what I say is nonsense anyway, so you're not winning. But the real problem here is rendering the squiggly lines underneath for misspelled things. And it turns out the misspelled rendering was incredibly slower than rendering, well, all the rest of the document, really. Amazing. Like 90% of the CPU time drawing these red lines, which are the most beautifully crafted, anti-aliased, B-splines with all these control points are sitting there. And it turns out, of course, this is really slowing down LibreOffice as well. If you have a large spreadsheet with lots of repeated names, or if you had a document with the wrong language set, which is quite common, you get a lot of red lines squiggly everywhere. And there's a real problem there. Luckily, we've fixed that. Of course, that's upstream. And we render a little bit of a red squiggle, and then we do bitmaps to cache that, which just disappears off the profile, which is encouraging. One of the problems we had, and particularly in our mobile version on Android, was the performance of editing text shapes in Impress. So when you would start to edit, we would click to select the text, and that's just a tap. And then you'd expect to get a keyboard and be able to, well, edit the text, really. But it was taking initially something like 5 seconds to actually get the keyboard up, during which time people had tapped a whole lot more. And it's just unshippably bad. And so one of the problems there was just setting up the property panels. We just love to parse some XML that describes the property panel, create all of these little widgets, routinely relay them out continually while we're doing that, and then throw them away again shortly afterwards, before then creating them again, and often several times during the process of changing context. So when you click in there, the sidebar notionally changes the context. So yeah, it's really, really silly. But after that, then just drawing the dashed line around the edit text box, we can see one of those here. Unfortunately, this was subdivided into a whole series of lines, which are all rendered as one batch. And so there's a lot of self-intersection. If you've ever drawn a doodle and colored in, colored it in, as probably you're doing now whilst listening to me, it's actually quite expensive doing that winding business of what lines and shapes overlap each other and do they intersect. And when you create lots and lots and lots of dashes, you have this, well, it's really quite an expensive computational problem to work out if they intersect. But of course, as you draw the line, this is a nonsense. They don't intersect at all. So on the dash line rendering, Armin did some work for us to short circuit this and accelerate the dash line rendering. Huge impact. Practically got rid of that. But again, it's not necessarily the thing you expect that takes the time rendering a slide. You wouldn't think that it would be the dashed line around the text box, but so it was, and it isn't now, both in LibreOffice and in Collabora Online. Similarly, the sidebar, a couple of things there, like just deferring, setting up the sidebar until you actually need it. It's helpful, but particularly caching the panels so that they're always there. They're just not necessarily visible. So we hide them away at very small sizes, and then we can just relay those out to show that in a cached way. Way quicker for all desktop users, less flicker, less CPU time, just a lot better. And I think actually that's all been redone recently for using native widgets. So probably we'll have to relook at that caching thing. But yeah, it's good to have native widgets. So and we're looking forward to shipping that in the next Collabora Online with much prettier sidebar. So JSON. So generating JSON is quite important for us in terms of getting that sidebar to the client so that we can make this mobile phone one-handed user experience. And yeah, so we then describe all these widgets, each of which can describe itself in JSON, which is great. So we used to have this dump as property tree method here, and that would essentially create an abstract tree structure thing, this property tree P tree. And for each one, we'd create that. But the problem is that each one contains its nested elements. So we would just stack these things up inside each other, allocating and freeing endlessly and incredibly inefficient for what is ultimately just streaming out a sequence of text. So, this boost property tree thing turned out to be a complete nightmare. And so instead now we have a nice fast JSON writer, which uses some of the optimized string streaming functionality we have in the LibreOffice core. So yeah, thanks again to Noel, who's disappeared that from the profile, which is fantastic. Image scaling and rendering. Yeah, so, well, lots of scaling for various reasons. You can see here that, this is a very, very slow process. And, we do it several times. We scale it during some idle redraw or painting of the page, complete redraw, and then also while we're painting tiles. And interestingly, this whole piece here doesn't need doing, and Lubosh, I think, has removed that. But one of the problems was that though we had a very nice scaling cache, it wasn't really prepared for having multiple windows at different zoom levels. And so it wasn't, for random reasons, we had a window in the background that was a different resolution. And so we were continually rescaling images to render them. Total nonsense. So now, we scale and we cache those at multiple zoom levels. So as you zoom in and out on your PC, LibreOffice, that's then quicker. And of course, we can we actually extended that to cache depending on the number of views you have, because lots of different users can be at different zoom levels. So that's great, and Lubosh fixed that. So hopefully lots of improvements there. Writer loves to very carefully count all of the areas it's invalidated. And you remember I said that you're seeing a whole writer document, like there's a massive window, which is very unusual to have the whole document. If you think of a 300-page document, all of it in view at the same time. And so there's this notional optimization that supposedly compresses regions by merging them together. And yeah, the algorithm is pretty horrific. It's something like n cubed in the number of regions. And if you consider a document with lots of fields in it, so like a bullet is a field, and as you move into or out of a bullet region, often we invalidate all those bullets to render them with a gray field mark. So you can suddenly end up with, well, thousands of items going through this n cubed loop, which before you know it is billions of operations doing stuff. And yeah, so this is just a nonsense. So actually, Miklos did some great work here to not invalidate bullets and render them as you move into them, because, well, it's kind of a bit of a silly feature. And yeah, now we have this, it's only n squared, so that's kind of nice. And I think Noel has worked with Lubosh, and there's some more kind of sorting and optimizing of that to make it even more efficient, which, well, hopefully that'll accelerate all large writer documents that are rendered. Similarly, in Calc, we have this, this get print area thing is called as you switch views for various reasons, partly to work out where to draw page boundaries, I think, so you can draw lines on that. But Calc is a particularly nasty problem. So the pixel area is dependent on zoom. So as you zoom in, it's very important that all your rows that are the same notional print height are the same pixel height on the screen. For two reasons. Probably the subclinical neurosis of spreadsheet workers means that it avoids them trying to resize it to make them all the same height on the screen, and then as they zoom, they're different heights again. But I think there's an important aesthetic thing there. But it does mean that you have to scan from the beginning of the document to work out the pixel position of any cell, which is really expensive. And there was a whole load of problems here that would essentially you getting a row, trying to work out which row you're at for a given height is important. And, well, it's now massively faster. We have span trees for hidden rows and span trees for row heights, and those can be non-contiguous. And, so now instead of kind of doing row by row checking of some of these, we intersect these span trees and work out optimal regions that match. So we can go, oh, yeah, well, these are all that height, but they're all hidden. And then there's some more of that height, but they're visible, so that we can calculate the pixel rounding problems that get compound as you get down and down and down larger sheets much more quickly. So that's, again, very useful for LibreOffice. And there's a lot more in core. I think Noel had a lot of good pointers on getting involved in performance. I'm personally quite passionate about it. I just get no time for it, but Noel's done lots of things. There are lots, faster file opening, better font caching for text rendering, faster scrolling, spreadsheets, improved spreadsheet filtering, which took a lot of time, big chart insertion setup problems and so on. And yeah, I mean, in LibreOffice Kit, Lubosh has done some great stuff. We used to calculate and paint and lay out the whole document in order to render it to an invisible surface, which is like 1 by 1 pixels large. And so avoiding lots of that layout overhead and rendering overhead was just not useful. So I think at this point we get a detail overload. There's really loads of stuff that's being fixed. And all of that's shared with LibreOffice, helps improve performance there. And interestingly, the way online renders is increasingly how every modern toolkit should be rendering. So in idle and validation rendering, rather than trying to do it immediately when you type keys and so on. And so hopefully lots of that helps improve the future. As we move to a sort of a uniform skier Cairo type rendering model, my hope is that that's, it's not done immediately, it's done idly, and so we can start to get rid of the back buffers and some of this other nonsense that we don't need, and really, reduce memory use, improve performance, and just integrate better with the underlying operating system. So then there's the web services daemon. So we had some really silly things in there. So one of the things that it does is it shuffles memory from the kit to the web services daemon to the client. And, we buffer our data. Obviously, it's important that, we make messages and we store them in a standard vector. And then we transmit them, from the beginning. And we used to, transmit a chunk and then erase it. And that, if you've got a lot of data, 20 megabyte image, for example, that means shuffling all of that data down, and then it gets smaller and smaller, but not very quickly. So, SSL will only allow you to write a 16K chunk at maximum. So if you shuffle 10 megabytes down through a 16K chunks, you get 1,200 vector copies, which is, on average, 10 megabytes each copy, which is really not fast, and particularly on a mobile phone or device there. Anyway, we inserted a buffer class that wraps this, and we don't erase. We have an offset there, and bingo. So we shuffle then a megabyte at a time instead of 16K at a time, and you're 64 times faster, which is very, very visible. Another problem with STL on Android is it's just amazing. I mean, when we first used and compiled LibreOffice for Android, it turned out that we had to binary patch all sorts of bits of, actual core STL library out at the bottom, which is really embarrassing. So, they're just live runtime bugs that would make LibreOffice not even start. So I don't think we have to binary patch those anymore, but I think the assembler to do it is still in there to kind of mend Android to the very basics so we could start. But this, destroying vectors should not be on the profile. I mean, you should not have a loop that assigns all of these items to 0. It should, but here you are. Here you can see it. I mean, you don't believe me. I didn't believe it either. But here we are, sort of creating and destroying these buffers. And it's not even in the memory allocation subsystem, particularly. It's, it's like clearing a vector shouldn't be taking time. You can see, when you destroy a vector, anyway, these are all vectors of char, they're just like byte buffers. And so the vector madness on Android is taking far longer than actually, the scaling the bitmaps, which we found out was a problem, and rendering stuff, kind of really silly. So anyway, we fixed that. And then key events. So on a heavy load, actually, it turns out you can't process the key events quick enough. So what you really need to be doing is merging them together. So Tor has done some great work here to, turn your FOO into a single foo input to try and collapse that backlog, and to, because there's a whole load of things as you insert text, there's a lot of work that's done in the document. And as you switch context and so on, there's work done. And so we can then catch up much more effectively. And similarly for removing text context, which is kind of a backspace delete event, merging those together. And I don't know actually if we merge these things into each other, but probably we should be doing that too. So it would be nice if someone wants to hack on, kind of optimizing that before it goes in there in the queue, just to shrink the input queue. Another huge win was that previously we had to pause all of our document editing during save and upload. So a LibreOffice save is usually pretty quick. We've done lots of work to optimize that, at least for reasonably sized documents. It's way sub-second and very, very flash, which is cool. But the upload, which we assumed would be fast, like in the same data center from one machine to another machine, sending a 10 megabyte document for an autosave, it turns out that this can take several seconds. Just sending that, committing it, make sure it's saved to an object storage, which can be, some big cluster of magic machines and so on. And this is not something that's been optimized in terms of end-to-end round trip, an atomic transaction time. Because usually that's not a problem for enterprise file sync and share. There's plenty of time to do your upload and background synchronization. So thanks to Ash, we've done a whole load of work in the core to allow us to do that asynchronously, so that the saving is going on and you don't stall your typing. So there isn't a jerk while you're typing. That is just streaming out and committing in the background. And that's quite a complex piece of work. And that arrived in 6.4.11 and 6.4.10. Maybe in 6.4.9, 6.4, somewhere there. Anyway, there's been a lot of work to make that really, really robust and catch lots of corner cases. And, when things are happening asynchronously and your save is going on while you're closing, doing another edit and closing the document, there's lots of interactions there that are really worth getting right and testing and tracking and so on. So even so, there are some synchronous things there. So if you're renaming, for example, it's really important that we've actually done the rename and switched to the new document before allowing you to type again. So Pedro's made some beautiful animations for this. And for the core piece where we can't make it asynchronous yet, though we have a plan for that, there's a nice animation there as you save your document, which is kind of cool. So JavaScript, yes, I told you about JavaScript earlier. Turns out that we thought that most of our performance problems were either in the network or in the web service daemon or in LibreOffice, but actually found that we'd been really misfocusing our optimization. Lots of the performance problems were really in the JavaScript and in the browser, which was really unexpected. And we found one of these, and then Tor went and made a beautiful end-to-end profiler. So in theory, we can see stuff going, well, as Tor said, it's not quite end-to-end. Like when you press a key press, it's hard to trace that through the pieces and back again. But, well, anyway, yeah. But at least it shows you everything that's going on in a synchronized way. And you can turn that on, and then you can see, you know, an event happening in the browser being sent, being received, being processed, and tiles coming back. So that's really useful. And yeah, be careful with your JavaScript. It turns out there's a whole lot of silly things. So one of the things that was particularly annoying was that you could see tiles render one by one. So, you know, if you did something, you would, you know, if you look at a profile, you could actually see things like that. So as you hit page down and a new part of the spreadsheet was revealed, you know, you'd actually see tile artifacts, which is kind of awful. And it turns out this was actually a feature. So we were unaware of the fact it was a feature, but it seems that we were sending WebSocket messages one by one to get them down the pipe as quickly as possible. And the browser is processing WebSocket messages one by one, and in between, it re-renders everything. So, you know, as you would get your tile, the new image, it would essentially re-render. I mean, it was creating a video for you of what was going on. Exactly what we don't want, because, of course, while it was doing that, it was blocking any other input coming, and it was actually buffering these things very aggressively. So it's like a 128K buffer in the background, both outbound and inbound on the WebSocket. And so this is just ridiculous. So there's a comment about it here, I guess. So what do we do? Well, we added sleep, and everything gets much quicker. So what we do is essentially we read our WebSocket very quickly, and we don't do anything with that message that will touch the DOM. We don't redraw or do anything. We just queue it all up. So we slurp loads of content off the socket, and yeah, and a millisecond later, when we've read it all in, then we process it and render that on the screen. And so that was pretty cool. That made things a lot better. And you can see, what can you see? What is this? Well, yeah, so one of the other problems was that having done this, we were all happy and everything, but it still didn't seem quite as good as it could be. And so asynchronous image loading turns out that even if you have all of the image data in your hand as an image URL, and you want to create an image out of it, you can't do it. You have to do it asynchronously, because the browser was fed up with people, asking synchronous web requests that were slow. And so there's broadly no shortcut, it seems, for, well, I have all of the data, please give me an image. It's, again, asynchronous. So anyhow, so once we put that in to then wait until the image actually was there, then finally we could then get this working. So we then emit all of our events that are complete, meaning, we've got the image data, everything is in hand, so we can render quickly. And then suddenly, as you page down, you get pretty much a whole screen full, which is kind of cool. Another big problem we found was just the GC pressure from loading, converting images. So image formats are a bit of a problem. And we need to use image URLs, which are base64 encoded to get them in. And, well, there was a whole load of string copying there. I mean, essentially what we were doing was this. We were doing, appending a character to a string, and then doing this base64 encoding, and simple piece of code, but it essentially piles up ever longer strings, which are then garbage collected by JavaScript, and this makes just an incredible waste. So instead, it's much better if you pass all of those parameters as arguments to a function, using a rather more magic JavaScript feature with this data slice and so on, which was great. So we implemented that, and then we discovered that we blew the stack if we had particularly complex images. So amazingly, everything worked fine while you had a white document. But when you had like white noise in your document, you got a very large thing and you blow the JavaScript stack. So, well, anyway, now we use, we only pass 4K parameters to the function, and amazingly faster and much less GC pressure. We love to repeat the same work the whole time. So, we get multiple cursor updates. If you hold your arrow down in Calc, you get several at a time. And we would then just be scrolling and doing all this calculation until we, to process the queue. So, well, just delay those to the end. The table handling, we love to continually send bogus table messages about the table handles, for resizing and sizing tables. So as you typed in a table, every character you send would create and destroy loads of these handles, like half a second's worth of, DOM fooling around, creating and handling those messages, all of them duplicate. So, well, 15 times faster to do it just once.
Michael, you have about 4 minutes left.
Thank you. I have a timer here, 4 minutes, 38 seconds. But thanks, Guillaume. You're wonderful. And I'm getting there. So now we have a messages done event that just does all of this at the end when those are all slurped. The jQuery plugin, we discovered this actually from writing profiling tools. So we had a profiler, so you can run the whole JavaScript editing session, and you can run like 5 or 6 random typers, which was our bête noire, as it were. And we can run them all in parallel and see what's going on as we rushed it, run it through the JavaScript code. And it turns out that there's some just, cargo culting of a jQuery plugin to do something totally unimportant that then was taking 800 milliseconds. Of course, with the JS DOM, it took 5 seconds on startup, so you really saw it. And Mert fixed that now. So our Google, our old, traditional user experience with menus and toolbar is then just massively faster to start now, which is kind of good. So yeah, profiling is good. So anyway, here are the conclusions. We're much faster. We did a lot of work. Lots of that is in LibreOffice 7.2, the core work. More of it's coming in 7.3. A whole lot of it is already shipping in Cool 6.4.11, but some of it is the more risky pieces in terms of adjusting, rendering, and avoiding bits of invalidations coming in 2021 in the next month or so, month or two. There's a lot more work to be done here. We're writing stressing and profiling tools that replay traces and load the code. And yeah, we're not even nearly done yet. I think there's a factor of 2 at least, almost everywhere you look. So yeah, so the real trick then is just knowing what to optimize now and looking at the profiles and focusing that work on things. So yeah, thank you for everyone that's done lots of hard work there. And well, it all drives our mission to make open source rock. And that's my talk. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you, Tom.
And I don't see any question on the chat. Yeah, people might be amazed at how amazingly the performance has improved in the past year. I don't know.
Yes, it's possible. Or they'd just be, hitting their heads. We found a lot of really silly things there, and well, I don't know. Until you profile and you have time to look at these things, you don't catch the sillies. So it's really great to have time and an economic incentive then to chase performance and really improve that for everyone.
So maybe like one short question for me, is it so you mentioned you had the complexity of big O of N3 at some point.
Yes.
That you kind of shrank into big O of N2 instead. And does that apply to the desktop version as well?
Yes, absolutely.
All right,
so all of that stuff was in the desktop. Now, of course, it's the N there is the number of invalidation regions on the screen. So yes, you would possibly see that if you have a large writer document well zoomed out and say lots of bullets and field invalidations.
Yeah.
It's easy to criticize programmers. The reality is we're using the code in a way that they didn't expect it to. And so, it makes perfect sense to write an n-cubed algorithm if you have a small n, If it's 10, then there's not really a problem. But when it's 10,000, you have an epic problem. And so, yeah, I mean, you can't blame the code, but it should improve that for everyone. So yeah, much of the work here is in the core and gone back into it. I think, the first third of my talk or 2/3, 2/5 was probably about that. Yeah.
Okay, I think we are running out of time for other questions. There is none. I had another one myself, but I can ask that on the chat. If you want to engage with Michael for discussions, you can do that on the chat or by email or whatever
Definitely.
channel that you have. Thank you very much, Michael.
My pleasure. Great to talk. Thanks, guys. Everyone, I say. Bye.
And now is already time for the next talk from Koye, who is here, I believe. And yes. And thank you for sending your recording. So I will just play that. Yeah, as far as I recall, the talk is pretty long, so it's not clear we'll have time for questions, but you can ask question on the chat, and Koye will answer on #librecon-room1 there. And over to Koye now.
Let's start my session. Who am I? My name is Koji Anora. I'm Japanese. I love Neo4j graph database, and I got a Graph Community MVP 2020. And I am a Neo4j speaker and ninja and developer. And I love LibreOffice. I am a Japanese LibreOffice team, and I'm so interested in the GraphQL language. It is used in GrandStack. GrandStack is framework GraphQL and React and Apple Server and Neo4j database. It's cool. Okay, this is agenda. I will talk 6 topics. What is GraphQL? Or what is language used for? And which components? Writer, Calc, Impress, and third, environment. Do we need a server? 4, how to implement. Which language do I use for BASIC or Python or Java or something like that? And 5, a GraphQL query to Calc. This is main topic. Select item and limit row. The last one is what to do next. I have many problems and try to next. Okay, 6 topics. I start my first topic. What is GraphQL? What is GraphQL? Are you familiar GraphQL? GraphQL is a query language for APIs, like REST. Facebook created the language. Why Facebook built GraphQL? About 10 years ago, Facebook had some problem with API. Mismatch between front-end and back-end API interface and poor performance and frequently crashed. So they want to fix the problem. So Facebook created the new language, new query language, GraphQL. Query language for APIs. What kind of query language API? SOAP, REST, GraphQL, or something like that. And GraphQL is a runtime for filing those queries. Okay, let's go to next. Query language for APIs. These are the three best known query languages. If you are older, you probably know SOAP. I used SOAP many years ago. Okay, three languages for API, many best known. One is SOAP 1.2. Latest one is 27 maybe, I think. So old one. So second is REST, most popular for APIs. And OpenAPI is most widely accepted format. And newest one is GraphQL. Start 2018, June. Really new. And okay, let's talk a little about the foundation. URL is here, graphql.org foundation. History. GraphQL was created in 2012, open sourced by Facebook in 2015. In 2019, Facebook and others created a GraphQL Foundation. A GraphQL Foundation hosted by the Linux Foundation. This is some of members. Apollo, AWS, Gatsby. I like Gatsby. IBM. I love Neo4j and PayPal, Twitter, and etc. Okay, which component? Why I choose LibreOffice? I use Calc every day. Last year, I used it to collect data for COVID-19 in Japan. This year, I'm using for the data conversion during software development. And I love Unicode without BOM. By those map, you know? Now, what component do I want to use it with GraphQL? I thought it would be good to use GraphQL for COVID-19 data exchange. So I choose a Calc. LibreOffice includes several apps, 6 apps: Writer, Calc, Impress, Draw, Math, Base. Calc is best for GraphQL, and base is good, I think. This time I chose Calc as my target. Next time, maybe base or update some Calc. Environment. Third topic. This is easy. Environment is here. My environment, LibreOffice 7.2.1 and GraphQL command. And the server, I use Apollo server, version 3. Apollo server includes a client and server function, but this time I use just a server. I didn't use a client. And for the query to calc, I simply put the command into Apollo server. This is an environment. I use as data okay. First topic, how to implement. This is most important topic. I thought it would be easy, but it was really difficult. First, I explain the REST process GraphQL function. REST, you know the REST uses post and get and patch and delete. There are many endpoints. Endpoint mean URL. When get the movie data, the URL will be a /movie/ID or something like this. When you get person data, the URL will be /person/ID. Okay, do you understand? Okay. Next, GraphQL. GraphQL is it's only post, just post, not get. Just single endpoint /GraphQL. Really easy. So I'm looking for HTTP post function for GraphQL. Where is the post function? In Calc, web service function is not post function, it's just get function. About Excel, Windows has post function with Microsoft XML 6.0, but Mac doesn't. No, I love Mac. No. So I don't find the post function. Next, what is a LibreOffice extension? Three kinds of extension. One is LibreOffice extension. It works with many languages, not just BASIC. BASIC, Python, JavaScript, Java, and Bean Shell. And for Uno, C++, and Python, and Java languages. Great. And second, special calc extensions. It means adding that add spreadsheet function to calc. Good. And third, pack extensions, templates, gallery, and old text. So LibreOffice extension. First one is good for develop GraphQL. Okay, let's start. I'm not quite sure how to connect. I don't know. Do I need Uno? I don't know. Which language to choose? I don't know. Basic, Python, Java. Okay. Anyway, I created Hello World. I'm a newbie of extension. This Hello World uses a basic language. This site is here. Development, create a Hello World LibreOffice extension. It's good example. Okay, I need two queries. One is for client. A client query to a GraphQL server from calc to some other database. And server query from GraphQL server. Okay, and now I need I don't know connector and driver. I don't know that time. Anyway, I chose Python language. It's easy to write and understand, and many library. Python has many library. Oh, great! I chose Python. Okay, first time I tried to calc as GraphQL client. Calc queries Neo4j using GraphQL. I tried to calc ask some library and Apple server and to Neo4j. Okay, I found a good Python library. In this time, I use GQL Python library. In GQL architectures is inspired by React Relay and Apollo client. This is a GitHub URL is here, GraphQL-Python/GQL. This library uses a GraphQL Python GraphQL core. I think it's good implement a library. This is a GQL document. GQL 3, version 3 is pre-release version. document is here. Good document. And the install GKL library is really easy. pip command, pip install pre. Version 3 is a pre-release version, pre-GQL, just yet. I will show you a part of the code. Okay, it's really, it's easy to write. This is a query from Calc to Neo4j database. Calc, the query is two rows, and just query users item property is user ID and name and number of reviews, Query response is here. Data users, user ID, name, number of reviews. It's good. It's work. Second, a Calc's database. This is really important. Apple server or some LibreOffice API to Calc. I think GraphQL queries Calc using Apple server. I use LibreOffice API. In this time, I use Uno component. Uno is here. First time I download this SDK, and I watch the developer's guide. I don't know what I want to LibreOffice version, current version website. This is OpenOffice Wiki. Okay, GraphQL query to Calc. Calc to GraphQL. Now, okay, I create the movie ODS, the Calc file, some movie data, Neo4j movie sample to maybe CSV to Calc. I tried three queries. One is all movies with all properties. Second is all movies with just title and released. A third, just 3 rows movies. 3 simple queries. This is a movie ODS. First column is title, second released, third tagline. File name is movie ODS. Sheet name is movie. Column name is title released. tagline. Rows just 39, 38 data with header, one header. I try access old movies with all color. You will see, well, okay. Left is query. Right is answer. Okay, movies, just 3 columns. I wrote 3 columns, all 3 columns. So calc return the 3 columns and 38 data. All movies, all column. Okay. Second, all movies with title and release. Oh, this is easy. Query data is just titles and release. GraphQL understand 2 column. You need 2 columns, just 2 columns. The answer is 2 column, each 2 column and movie data. One is G matrix released 1999. Second is the matrix reloaded 2003. Okay. So query is so easy to write. Third, 3 rows movies. Query is just like that. Movies options limit 3 and title released. So return from calc just 3 rows. Oh, I did it. Oh, what to do next? Last topic. I have many programs. One is calc. HTTP post was not in the function. I want to this post function into next LibreOffice. I want. And second, LibreOffice API. Really hard to understand UNO and SDK. And I don't know well about what language to choose. What language is best? I don't know. Java, C++. And third, GraphQL is not much use case at LibreOffice or something. I have a lot of program. But next, try what to do next. This time is first just simple query, just one seed query. Okay, and I want to add the next these functions. One is join, get from multiple seeds, like that. Write GraphQL coding. This is 2 seed, movie seed and person seed. join and back to the answer. And mutate. Mutate means update and delete. I want to these additional features. And I open my GitHub to the public and to the Libreoffice extension.
Thank you, Koji Anaura, and sorry for mispronouncing your name earlier, Koji Anaura from the Japanese community. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but I see Koji on #LibreCon iPhone Room 1 chats where you can engage in discussion there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now it's already time for Miklos, who I see here. So since we're a bit running out of time, I will just hand over to your talk. Miklos Vajna from Collabora Productivity. And thank you for sending a pre-recording.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Getter Margin in Writer Page Styles talk. I'm Miklos. I'm currently working for Collabora. I have been working on Writer for quite a while, and today I'm here to present you brand new Writer feature present in LibreOffice 7.2, which is Getter Margins in Writer Page Styles. So what is the motivation for this feature? Writer has several different page styles. One of them is several different styles, and one of them is the page styles next to paragraph styles or character styles or list styles. And page styles are used to specify all kinds of different page properties. You can't even directly apply formatting to a page. You always have to go via a page style. This includes several different margin settings, such as left margin, right margin, top margin, or bottom margin. If you look at our competition, Word has an extra type of margin. It's called the Getter margin. This is the whole concept of it is not that complex. You can imagine that you are editing a book in Writer, and you want to make sure that you have some equal amount of right and left margin. But then you print that book, you give it to someone to actually do a binding on that book, and that binding consumes a little bit of space typically on the left side of those pages, which means that the left margin will be smaller and the right margin will be larger, so they do not equal anymore, and it looks unprofessional. So what you can do is that you define an extra space for the Getter margin, and then for the remaining space you can see on the user interface that the left and the right margin again equals, and then it looks nice. Obviously you could do the same with just tweaking the left and right margin, but then you don't really have this feedback on the user interface that the remaining space after binding is something that equals on both sides. And like it sounds this simple. The way to complexity is that there are a few more details here. It can be not only on the left, but also it can have a custom position. You might want to consider right to left, right-hand directions, and page borders, and a few more things. So in the user interface, we have this page style dialog in online and also in desktop LibreOffice. We have a new widget to control not only the left, right, or bottom margins, but also the getter. And also for the getter position, you can have it on the left or at the top. So this is how a new rendering result looks like. What you can see there is that on the left side there is some larger spacing, and on the right side there is a smaller spacing. And this is how the reference looks like for a docx file. Again, larger spacing on the left and smaller amount of spacing on the right. And this is how we used to render this document in the past, which is not correct. Same amount of space on the left and on the right. This was the first round of this work, and after giving it a bit of a rest, it turned out that there are a few more things to be done. So there was a second round of this work, and that was mostly focused on the right to left support. So it turns out that, at least in the OXML specification, there is a dedicated section level property for if this gutter margin is right to left or left to right. And then we map this to writer page styles. So in case you open some Word format, then you now get an additional checkbox on the page style dialog, where you can see if this gutter margin should be on the left or on the right. This means that even if the position is not at the top, which means left, it might be actually left or right. And this is what you see in this screenshot, that in this case, if this extra Boolean setting is enabled, then you have much more space on the right and not on the left. So the question is how this feature is implemented. As usual, there is this checklist on the TDF wiki in the development/writer page, how to add a full new feature, and the procedure was quite similar here as well compared to other features. So first we need some way of representing this feature in the C++ classes in the core internal document model. One writer document is this swdoc class, and inside that we have several page styles. One page style is represented by the SW page task as in page descriptor or page description class. And inside that we have item sets as kind of property lists for the various settings. This will be important when we will get to mirrored margins. So as part of that, we have a pull item called left-right space item, and that one has members for left margin, right margin, top margin, bottom margin, and so on. That class now gained two new members, the getter margin, and we have a dedicated right getter margin. These two members are needed because when we will have a mirrored page layout, then we will generate dedicated page styles internally for left and right pages. This is to have the layout this way. It will not have to do the mirroring as part of rendering, but as we create the layout, we will have a separate generated set of properties for left and right pages, which means that even if you don't enable the right to left setting, you just have your getter margin in the inner pages, then the generated left set of properties and right set of properties will have different item sets. So on the left side, you will have getter margins set to some non-zero positive amount of space, and then on the this will be on odd pages, and then on even pages you will have the getter margin set to 0, and the right getter margin will be set to some positive value. Once you have a document model, then the next step you want to have is some public UNO API, some new UNO property for this, because this is how most of the work done by the ODT import and the docx import is done. It will build the document model using the UNO API. So again, for the writer document, we have the comSumStar text document service, and inside that we have the various style families. We have the page styles, and one page style is represented by this comSumStar style page style service. Now this page style object has various properties like left margin, top margin, right margin, and so on. And initially I added one new property there, this gutter margin, and then in the second round, which is again some integer, typically 0, but it might be something larger, and in the second round a second new property was added there if the gutter is right to left, which is a boolean. This right to leftness is something that's explicit in Word formats. Also for Word formats, the user interface makes this explicit, but in case of UDF, this is something we can infer from the writing direction. So if you use gutter margin and you save it to page style and write it to ODF, then the right to left setting is not something we write to the file format. Rather, we will just write the writing direction, and on import we will set the right to left boolean flag based on the writing direction. So here the ODF format is a bit less redundant, because typically nobody would need this right to left gutter for a writing direction, which is left to right. On the other hand, for Word formats, we do a one-to-one mapping from the file format. So in case there will be this unusual mismatch between the writing direction and the RTF flag of the gutter, then we can preserve that correctly, which sounds like a reasonable compromise to kind of please everyone. Now we get to the layout, which is typically the most complex piece for writer. And ideally this shouldn't be that complex, like the layout is pulling the left margin value from the document model, and now what we should do is that we pull the left margin and the gutter on the left side, and we pull the right margin on the right side, and be done with that. But there are a number of additional complexities. So first is the page border. The page border is somehow between the edge of the page and the edge of the area where the body text is laid out. And the question is, if you add some additional spacing there, then where the page border should be? Should it be at the place where the gutter spacing and the left margin spacing meets, or should it be at this inner place where both the left margin and the gutter margin consumed its space and missed the body text area? And the answer to this is that the precedent is that Word is doing both of these spacings together, and then it missed the body text area. So we do the same, just to not introduce some additional painful unwanted incompatibility. And to make this even more complex, the page border itself can have its own spacing, but that spacing is between the page border and the page body area. So that way you can make it so that the page border is still going towards the edge of the page. So this was one thing to find out how to do correctly, and then decide and make sure that the layout is taking page borders into account correctly. And then the second tricky piece was this mirrored page margins. So what we do is that we have some, like initially we have a single item set in the document model for page styles, and then we generate a dedicated left item set and right item set from that, and then we use this left properties for left pages and right properties for right pages, which means that even if you ignore right to leftness, we generate a left gutter margin for left pages and right gutter margin for right pages. And then layout can be faster because it doesn't have to know if this is a left page or right page. It just once gets this item set, and it will just render the correct amount of spacing on the left and on the right. So this is for the mirrored page layout. And third, you have the right to leftness. So even if there is no mirrored page layout, then what's nominally left is more like start of the page, and start is right for right to left, and left is left for left to right. And one thing I forgot to note here is that we can also have the gutter position at the top, which is again something layout has to take into account, but that's somewhat simpler because then right to leftness is something you can ignore. If you are at the top, that's always at the top, so that's not special. Then you have the importers or exporters, and this is what we in general call filters. So for UDF, we have this page layout properties XML element in the style namespace, and that has various attributes for the existing left, right, whatever margins. And we now have a margin gutter property attribute as a new attribute in the LibreOffice Extension namespace, and there is a proposal filed at the UDF-TC to put this to the actual next UDF standard. For the gutter position, that's something that's simply in the settings XML. It's a document global property, so there is no standardization for that. We just write gutter is at the top, and if this is true or false. This could be a page type property, but then Word does not support per section values for this property as well, so it sounds like nobody really needs this, then why add this complexity to the code? And we have similar serialization and parsing for docx and doc and RTF. What's somewhat complex is that in the Word formats you have the border, the page border spacing in a more complex way. In ODF it's always simple spacing, some positive or zero amount of space, and that's it. But for Word, the border can be from the page edge or from the text, and that's somewhat more complex, which means that in some cases we need to do a bit of mapping at import time and export time to arrive to this simpler document model that we have in Writer. That's always calculating the border spacing from one reference point. Then for the user interface, it could be just a spin button for the gutter margin, but in reality this is a bit more complex. You have the gutter position, which is it could be a chat box, but it's a combo box because that's what's familiar for Word users. And we also have this checkbox for if this is right to left or not. And this is hidden in the ODF case because in ODF case we infer this from the writing direction. Also, what's some additional complexity is that you have this preview widget on the dialog, and that preview widget is taking gutter margin into account. So you do see some increased amount of left spacing here and right spacing, and the left and the right margin is the same. So it only happens because the gutter margin is taken into account during calculation of that preview widget. Now we get to testing, which again should be simple, but then it gets more tricky. So we have a core layout test just for the actual layout if we render the page border at the correct place, but then we have a separate test case for the mirrored margins case. Then we have the writer OXML export test suite, which is actually import and export, and we covered the docx filter there. And then we have some separate task cases for the page borders if the page border is measured from the page or from the text. In one case, we exactly do what writer would do anyway, and in the other case, we need this mapping to the writer document model. Then we have an ODF export test suite, which is again ODT import and export. So we need to cover the ODF bits there. Then we have the WW8, which is the binary doc format, import and export. RTF has the markup to represent gutter margins, and if the gutter position is from the left or from the top. We also have RTF markup for the right to leftness of the gutter margin. So all this is covered in the RTF export test suite, which is again import and export. And then you redo everything just for the from top case when the gutter margin is not on the left but on the top, and then you repeat everything for the right to leftness. So it's more than a matrix just for testing. And it sounded like it's something simple, but then it gets complicated. And then we had to do help content for this, so the users actually see what's a gutter margin in case they are not familiar with the concept, if they don't have a tick in their head that, yeah, this is for my name. And as usual, this had to be paid by somebody, even if it's shared for the community for free. So thanks for that. And to sum this up, Writer now has full support for gutter margin. This is something that's in each and every Word document, and we used to lose this setting in case it was not zero, and now we preserve it properly, render it properly, interact with that properly. And here is where you can see the slides in case you want to watch them later. Thanks for watching. And in case you have any questions, then perhaps after this there will be an opportunity to ask them. Thanks again.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. So I was saying, that's embarrassing. I was saying that, yes, indeed, we have, I was thanking you, and I was saying that, yes, indeed, we have some questions, some minutes for questions. And I see so far one question from Mark, who was wondering how does it work with vertical writing layout?
Thanks for the question. So it's a bit of a shame. Right to leftness, there's something that was covered in detail, and for the actual vertical writing, that's not something that was explicitly looked into or something that was explicitly tested. The idea is that the gutter margin is typically influencing some existing margin, like top margin, left margin, right margin, and hopefully it does the right thing also for vertical layout. But in case it does not, then it would be worse than bug report to describe what is the expected behavior there and how we go wrong there, because like it might happen that something is problematic. Somewhat ironically, I think the original request from this was via some partner who had a customer somewhere in some country where vertical writing is not that rare. So it's somewhat ironic that this was not explicitly tested. So feedback on that would be welcome. Hopefully either it just works out of the box, or if it is not, then hopefully it's something that's reasonably straightforward to fix. Any other questions?
I don't see any question here. Does anyone has anything to add? So I guess Mark needs to get in touch with you regarding this. I
Yeah,
guess
we
that's,
know each other, so
Okay,
we
okay.
will fine. We will fine.
Okay, cool. Do we have about 5 minutes left? No question.
Okay, then
Okay.
thanks again for your attention. And as always, you know how to find me on Bugzilla or email or whatnot. And if there is any feedback regarding that, then that's more than welcome. Thanks
And
for
you will
listening.
be on the, you are staying around on the
On the chat,
LibreCon
yes.
room one. Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks. And Thomas, you are here, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, so how do you want me to proceed then? So the talk is also, I don't think we'll have time for question at the end. It's almost 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
So should I just invite people to the chat room then for questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks. So hi everyone, welcome, good morning, and welcome to this last talk of this session. This is by Tomasz from Collaborate Productivity, who will give us a follow-up about the situation about the X-ray inspector follow-up for the talk that he gave during FOSDEM last year. And it will be a bit tight to give Q&A at the end, so please ask question on the chat instead at #librecon-room1. Thanks, and over to Tomasz now.
Okay, I'm Tomasz from Collabora, and I will talk about the building X-ray like UNObject inspector. So this is mainly a continuation from a FOSDEM talk. At that time of the when FOSDEM was held, I was in the middle of the implementation of the new object inspector. So finally now I can talk about how it actually looks in, as a whole. So first I will just quickly go through the introduction and why we did this, why we need the object inspector, and why we had to implement it. So the object inspector was a tender from the Document Foundation. The tender was for implementing support for a dedicated built-in UNO object inspector tool in LibreOffice. And thanks to the Document Foundation to make this work possible, so that we have now this awesome tool. So the development tools like this UNO object inspector is now called. It was released with LibreOffice 7.2 and can be. This is the latest release and can be freely used. So development tools about it. So what? First, let's talk about like UNO object inspector. What is an UNO object inspector at least? So it's a tool like X-ray tool or EMR, which was an extension for LibreOffice. The main purpose of these tools were to inspect the UNO objects, like what the properties are, the types and values, which methods it has, what interfaces objects, UNO objects implemented, which types are supported. So in addition to this, they also allow you to traverse the UNO object tree, so you can go from one object, see what properties are, and for the properties you can then again see what object, UNO object it contains. So you can go like recursively through the document object model, which is very good for the for developers or for just users that aren't very familiar how the document object model is constructed. They can use this tool and just see, inspect everything, and maybe they can use this when writing their extensions or macros. So what was the idea actually? The idea of the development tool is that it has to be a tool that is built in inside LibreOffice, so no extension again. The problem with this was of course always that extension has to be downloaded, and a lot of users don't really know that they exist. So if we have this available inside LibreOffice out of the box, this is more valuable to the users. Then there should be a dockable window on the bottom of the screen, like very similar to how development tools are in the popular browsers. You should have like two trees, left-hand side and right-hand side, where on left-hand side it should be just a subset of the document object model, where we can go to the current document object inspect current document object model, but not everything inside the document object model, just what was predefined. Just for example, inside writer, for example, there would be properties for paragraphs, and each paragraph there should have like each section of the paragraph. And for example, what is on the left hand side also is the styles. We can expect all the styles that are currently available. On the right hand side, then there should be the actual object inspector, where we see a lot of properties and information about the objects. It should also have a point and click functionality. This is more like whatever you have currently selected, we should be able to inspect it. So you select an object, like for example a shape, and if you enable this functionality, you select a shape and you can inspect it inside the object inspector. So as I said, this is already what I generally described. For the left hand side, again, the document review, this should be easier for the new users to understand the document object model and how to navigate it. On the right hand side, the idea on the right hand side is that there should be the object inspector. So it should be similar to the watch window that already exists inside macro editor. Unfortunately, we weren't able to share the code, but they are very similar how they're constructed. And this watch window shows like properties, methods, interfaces of an object, and you can see all the types and current values. And yes, as I said, it's possible to inspect the objects recursively, properties and objects recursively. And supports also looking into the collections, various collections and arrays. More on this later. So also what is good to have special handling of certain types. So point and click, as I already say, you click on inside the document and you can show the object inside the object inspector. So what's the state of the development tools? Like it was released inside LibreOffice. I will talk about this, how the object inspector or development tools are currently inside LibreOffice 7.2. So first one, where is the location where we can enable the development tools? Previously this was in help development tools, but this was not a very good place for the development tools. So I moved this to tools, development tools, as you can see on the screen. It's like very down where the extension manager, custom objects, I think this is, and macros. This is a very good place where we can find the development tools. So the structure, okay, on the left side, as I said, there is the document object model preview. There is a button current selection, which is the point and click functionality, and on the right side we have the document inspector. On the top, on the right hand side, we have additional menu for the object inspector, and on the tabs you have interfaces, services, properties, and methods. So using the tabs, we are changing what we want to see for the current object. So object to inspect are on the left hand side. For writer there is like paragraphs, shapes, tables, frames, and so on and so on. And for the calc, sheets, shapes, charts, pivot tables, and so on. And also, of course, for Draw and Impress there are pages or slides and shapes and so on. This is what you can generally select inside the document object model tree view, and then on the right side you can select it. So here you can see the location of the point and click. So this current selection is this current selection is the point and click functionality. It listens to all the changes, selection changes, and then after you select an object, you can inspect it in object inspector. If you disable this, then you can normally just work with the document review as before. So if this is enabled, you cannot, if you select anything inside the document object model tree view, it will have no effect because it had no effect because the current selection, this button, has precedence. And when it's disabled, then the control goes back to the document object model tree view. So the right hand side, the object inspector. So on the top there is a menu. We have like back, inspect, and refresh buttons. Back and inspect I will introduce later. And refresh button just refreshes the current object. So if the object changes in the between, we have to refresh it. This doesn't happen automatically because if we cannot, we don't actually check when the object changes. Maybe this is possible, but we didn't implement. This was not necessary. So we have to take in account that the object can change, and it could also be deleted when you are still inspecting it. So refreshes the current object. Then on the right hand side of the toolbar, we have like current shows the class name or the current implementation name, so we know which object we are inspecting. And then on the lower side we have like this tab view where we have interfaces, services, properties, and methods. So the most interfaces and services are generally not so interesting. Just list what interfaces the current object supports and in which services current object supports. So what's more interesting is properties tab. So I will explain a little bit more in detail what you can find in properties tabs. It shows all the properties of the current object. So properties that are that implement X property set, and this is not the only thing. It also shows the properties that have that are attributes, so they are marked as attribute inside the object interface definition language, and they're also shown pseudo properties. Pseudo properties are any properties or any methods that are get or set and or set methods. So if something starts like get string, it will be shown as a string property. But of course, if getString has no parameters, only if it has no parameters, it will be shown as a property here. Any other, like even if it has get something else, get string, and it has an input parameter that we show in the methods. There are special cases here, and this is that with also if the object implements x index container or x name container or x enumeration, we also want to show what are the content of this. So x index, it will show all indices of the current object, so we can nicely traverse the document tree. Similar for if it implements the x name container, it will show all the key or name value name property pairs of the current objects inside here. This is generally because otherwise it would be very hard to get to these values if it's not available. This special case is not available here, and yeah. So yeah, nesting is possible. This means like recursion is possible. So it shows properties in properties, and not only that, it shows also special types, like of course value types like strings are shown like as values, but you can also have structs and arrays. So struct, you can see struct, and you can go and inspect the properties or the members of a struct. And arrays similar like this, you can see what all the indices are of the array and inspect their values as well. The columns here, as you can see, is like this. The columns are like name, value, type, and info. So name is just property name. Value is the value of the property, if this is possible. If it is a value type, it is we can show the value, otherwise not. And we show something that is probably helpful. Like for example, sequence. For sequence, we show also the size of the sequence or array. And if there is nothing useful to show, then we just don't show anything. So the third column is the type. Here we show the type of the column, either it's a string, byte array, or some property, some or interface, or whatever it is, the type of this current property. And then last column is like info column, and this shows additional info. In many cases like access restrictions, like either, for example, if the property is a pseudo property, it shows if it's a getter or it also has a setter or it has both. And if the property is just for reading, or it can be also for reading and writing. So on the bottom we have like this properties like edit text field, and this is needed because if we have like value which is a very big one, for example a very long string, we cannot show this inside the tree view because it will be just too long. So we always limit this to a certain value, certain size of the string, or and just show this limited string inside the tree view, but the whole string will be shown then in the lower part of inside this edit text field. As you can see on the right side, there is a very long string, and we can see another good thing is that if we want to copy something from this string, we can do this inside here. We cannot do this inside TreeView. And of course, if it's inside the TreeView, we can just show one row, not multiple rows. This will be very, very annoying. So there's always one row, and if there are multiple rows of text, it will be shown here inside the edit text field. So there's also a stack, because if you right click on or just in the tool select this looking glass icon, it will inspect the current properties. And what this means is that this selected property will now go will be now the root, the inspected object. And when we do this, we put the previous object inside stack, so inside the stack. So we also have this back button enabled, when we can go just back to the previous selected, previous inspected object. So we can just form this like chain of inspected objects. So it's easier for the user to, like, if there is a lot of properties that he's not interested in, he can just inspect the current one and it will be on the top. And if he needs to go back, he can still go back with the back button. If on the DOM tree anything is selected, the stack is cleared. So it's not like that you can always go back. It will be cleared only if you are inspecting inside the current object this is working. Yes. But if you go to another object, or if you use point and click and selected object, change the selected object on the GUI, the stack will be clear. So this was about the properties. Next is then what is still interesting are the methods. So this now shows all the supported methods of the current objects. The method has like these methods has like 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, and first column is just method, is just the name of the method. Then the return type is what type will be returned. And I don't think this is always very exact. Currently, if the return type is more complicated, it will be shown like any, not exactly the type that we are interested in. This is just to make the GUI more easier to handle. And the third column is like parameters, which just shows what are the input parameters, the name of the parameter and the type. Not so just input, also if it's an output or if it's an input-output parameter. And the last column is implementation class. The implementation class is the class where the method is implemented. So this can, if the current object is derived from some implementation or some interface, then the interface where this method is defined is written here. This is all what is currently supported. So there are some more ideas and to-dos for the object inspector. For example, it would be very good inside methods that we have the possibility to execute a method. This is currently not implemented, but it will be good just if you say, okay, I want to execute this method, and then you would set the parameters and execute it. I think this can be very good for users that want to modify some things quickly. And another thing is also to inspect an object in an independent dialog. So currently we are always inside this development tools, but sometimes we want to just extract some inspect an object separately and just always have it on the screen, so it's easier for us to look at multiple objects at the same time. So I think that if you have a possibility to open a dialog in an independent dialog and inspect the object there, it will be very useful. So the demo. For the demo, I have like this one document open, and I'll just show a little bit how to work inside with this development tools and object inspector. So first we can just select current selection, and this will select this shape. And now we can go to the properties, and as we can see, this is now SVX shape collection. So just because you can select multiple shapes, it always has a shape collection, and the first shape inside the collection is the shape we are inspecting. So we can now go inside, and for example, we are interested in, I will put this now. We are interested in to get the shape text where this is located. So first we can just go and see here. There is a property string that has shape text as the value, so we can easily inspect and see how where this is found. So there are also other things that we can inspect here, and for example, if we are not interested in the other shapes, we can just say here inspect, right click inspect, or this, and now the top level it will be just the text contents of the this shape. So, for example, if now we write some paragraph, one, and again we are selecting this, so we have like this SVX text range, and now we have to go inside this, because this is again a collection of the ranges. We will just inspect. So now we are in one of exactly this text range, and we can go again see the string, and string is paragraph 1, like we are selected here. And if we are interested in other properties, we can see see here whatever other properties we are interested in. And if we go to methods, we can see all the methods that are. So as I say, these pseudo properties, you can see that there is a getString method, and because this is getString method, it's recognized as a property which is also available here as just string. Let's just look inside the document object model here. We have like we unselect this, and then we see that we have one paragraph and one text portion, and this should be exactly this one here. And if we look at it, string is paragraph 1. Okay. this is all for me. Thanks for listening, and this is all.
Thank you very much, Tomasz. This is a great talk, very comprehensive, and it's nice to see what happened with the TDF tenders. So like the update is I mean, what concretely happens with the TDF tenders. So the update is really appreciated. Unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A, but I see quite a bit of activity going on the hash librecon-room1 chat, and you can just keep chatting there, I suppose. So thank you very much, and that's all for me. And we'll have now like 30 minutes break and continue with a talk by Regis. Thanks, and bye-bye.
Thanks, Graham. So, Regis, you are in the room. Let's have a look. Regis, are you in the room? Well, unfortunately, I don't see him in the sidebars. Regis, if you can hear me, please give me a sign. There's Regis. Regis, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, now I can hear you as well. So can you try to share your slides?
Yes.
Guillaume, could it be that you are still sharing? No, this is the schedule again.
I just leave to be sure.
Could you say something?
No, now we have the list of participants, and now you can try to share your screen.
Okay. It's strange, doesn't work. Oh.
It's not working?
Not at this moment. It's strange.
Now he's gone again. I think I don't have to give him some rights or something like this. He should have this, and there's again.
I think it works now.
Yeah, now it's working. We are seeing your slides. So 2 seconds before the start. Okay, so let's start the second part of the conference day. So it's a pleasure to see you in the next part of the development track. We have a very interesting schedule with talks about two angles of development, one angle about source code of LibreOffice itself, and the other angle in scripting LibreOffice. First of all, we will have a talk from Régis Perdreau about navigate easily through LibreOffice code, the huge code base of LibreOffice with Source Trail and Visual Studio Code. Régis, the stage is yours.
Okay, thanks. So yes. Okay, just a little agenda. I will speak about tools, especially for developers, newcomers in source code. It's my first conference and at LibreOffice project, and first in English. So it's a big challenge for me. Who am I? So I'm French community member. I live in Savoie, France, a mountainous region. I especially involved in QA. I'm a LibreOffice user since StarOffice, most of the time under Linux. Working for Arawa at the help desk, an open source company in France, mainly motivated to understand how things work under the hood. Before I was a teacher in electrical engineering. I have students, and it was a different world for me, so I mainly self-taught about open source topic. Alors, it's a very experimental approach. The goal is to share some feel free to test yourself and report anything. Of course, so LibreOffice is very huge database. We need tools to not feel overwhelmed with 7 million lines of code, especially for beginners. Of course, we have already some tools. Remember, we have OpenGrok, a text search engine, Doxygen, a well-known source documentation project, which provides HTML documentation. And of course, you can still perform any text search with your favorite editor, automatic completion, other great tool with smart regex rules. Everything is on the wiki. Something. Okay. The story. So I was interested to have some class diagram, a clear dependency graph. Doxygen provide this, but sometimes it's complicated to interpret. So I'm looking for other tools, free software. I'm mainly using VS Code on Linux. My intention was one day caught by an article about Source Trail. It was a project edited by a little team, a little startup, which released an open source version in 2019. So tested in real world. The promise, it's not an advertisement from myself. I think this project is interesting. So the promise is get productive on unfamiliar source code. So it's the case. There is always a part you are unfamiliar. It sounds good. this software can analyze C, C++, Python, Java. Okay, perfect. It's not. It's a desktop. Oh, sorry, there is a mistake. It's a desktop application. You no need to be connected to any cloud service if you want to keep your work secret. It's very fast to set the tools. You have two parts. You have two parts. You have to get in VS Code, VS Code, or other idea the SourceTrail plugin. I will show you next. Install source code and get the app image. So next, maybe you know that, compile your LibreOffice code. You have to run, make VI IDEA integrations, because it creates a compile.json file, which is needed by the application. So after you select the project, you create it, and you launch the index session. Oh, sorry, I feel. So you need sometimes because you have to index a huge source code database. Some hours are required for indexing, and a little space near 2 GB. After that, you have your first screen with on the left all object in the code with the number of objects. So it's huge, of course. And on the right, you will see the source code. Here is first is a little summary. With your set 7 million of lines of code. And you can dive in next. Alors, use. You have to understand that VS Code is connected with SourceTrail and can exchange source location. So if you point an object in VS Code, you are transported, yes, at the right place in SourceTrail. At the bottom of the menu, the context menu, you have a SourceTrail sent location. So what we'll see next, I have a little example. I'm interested to see what is in set parameters. It's in the basic directory, the basic language. You have some round box who represent class and with the object in it, and the relation between different objects with an arrow, and link with other symbol. You have to expand. It's a bit contracted, but we'll see next in the live demo. And of course, there is an object which is called P method, I think. So the name is not very explicit. So what is this? It's a private field. So you can instantly point to it, and source trail will expand. It's a type, in fact, the type of this field, and show you what is this really very easily. Just the principle. Oh, okay. Okay. So now I will show you the real thing. So it's okay. So I have a bookmark. I already prepared the activity. So I have a bookmark, and I am at the right location. So we see set parameters, and on the right window, this method. Of course, I am not, if I see the VS Code windows, I am not in the right place. So with the contextual menu, I show in idea. And yes. It's the line. I am in the right place already. Okay. So back to source trail. So I tell you I can expand any object I want to see. Okay, it works. So I have to expand. I have the type of the link, type use. I can, of course, set the window. So I can see what is the type exactly, or other information. I can't close the box and see other thing. If I go back to set parameters, I have some links to other objects, of course, attribute. I can see the relations, I think. It's not a good example, for example. Of course, if I point other object, I can have other view, and as you can see, the source code change accordingly. Oh, it's a very. I want to see other things. It's not. If I point other version, sometimes I can see inheritance. Sorry, it's too big now. So I have to decrease. Yes, for example, you have inheritance link like this. And of course, you can see the inheritance link in the source code. If you want to go to the idea, so show in idea, and you are now at the right place. Okay. So, so if I want to go back, I can use, of course, arrow, history arrow, or bookmark. I have bookmarked previously. Yes, that's why I'm looking for. You can have other dependency graph from the SBX method, for example. Is also voilà, it's interesting. You can see the inheritance diagram, and if you need it, and of course you can expand to see some interesting. Okay, so I think these tools it's interesting to help a little the developer, especially beginners. It's another way to navigate in source code. So the demo is at the end. It's a basic example. You can have, of course, many dependency graph. You can something. Of course, you can move everything. If something is not interesting, you can hide what you need. And it's interesting to you can save if you want to illustrate any documentations. Okay, so we stop here for the demonstrations. I will talk a little about the project. I have discovered, I have discovered it 1 year ago. It's not a replacement for Doxygen. Keep it, of course. Doxygen use commentaries in it. It's not the case here. The problem is this project is very little. It runs since 2015, and it's supported by a little team of contributors. The freeze are yesterday. Yesterday, I think of my slides, and the freeze of the project is announced. And the last versions will be at the end of this year. Why? Because the team is little, and of course, developers want to reach other interesting open source projects. Of course, but happily. And source, so maybe the project will be will have a successor, and the source is available, of course, on GitHub. Okay, that's all for the moment, and thanks to the audience.
Yes, thanks, Regis. And don't hesitate, your English is very good for talks. Thank you for the demo, for the very handy example with this tool. Yes, as you mentioned, there were some comments in the chat room that quite yesterday this freeze was pronounced for this source trail tool. So perhaps there will be a future for it, but I'm sure that it is it could be used at least for a few months for doing work, right?
Yes, it's a question.
Yeah, I asked you for your advice if it is okay for use this as it was yesterday freezed, as
Yes.
you told us, that that it is okay to use this tool for the next month as well.
Yes, but I think these tools can be continued. Of course, we have to talk about, because I don't know if some people knows or use it already. So I will look at it in the next week and months, try to improve this use. It's free, it's open source. There are some other proprietary tools, but not so simple to handle.
Okay.
Okay.
So if there are some interested in prolongation of this tool, I think they should contact you, and you can build a group for promoting.
Why not? Why not? Of
yeah,
course, of course.
So any other questions? I do not see anything in the chat room. You have now the chance.
Hello. Could you provide any alternative if this application is discontinued?
Alternative. That's what I'm looking for. Just a question. I am not the developers. I'm looking. I follow a little this project. It's one way to contribute and use and speak about it. But I am not the developer for the moment. I will see the source code if I can do something in it. But that's a problem. I don't know any alternative which can handle so big LibreOffice database. So for the moment, if someone knows something about it, an alternative, I can be interested.
So I don't know if it is an alternative for this special part of this tool chain, but as all know, we have this OpenCroc tool.
Yes, of course.
LibreOffice but it's as you have demonstrated, it's very handy with this shapes to click in and to go down this inheritance tree and so on. I don't know if this is possible in OpenCroc.
Thank you. If possible, I think it is good to let the developers know about it in the developer mailing list. I think this can be a good and interesting issue for the developers.
Okay, I do not see. Okay, language analysis is very tricky and complex. Visualizing your giant project is hard. Do you know any alternatives other than OpenCroc? No, yeah, Hossein, you asked these questions by yourself. So other questions? If not, thanks, Regis, for your kind talk, for your efforts, and hope we will hear you again the next time with your second talk in the LibreOffice Conference. Thanks for this talk. And let me perhaps use this this time between the next talk to a little advertising. As you see, these shiny T-shirt here we have delivered to every organizer and every speaker. So if you want to have such an T-shirt of the conference, of the online conference, you can have a look at the conference website. There's a merchandising link, and you can get it. So this was a little advertising break for it. We have 5 minutes left, so have a quick coffee. I will follow on exactly on 3:30 because the next is a video longer than 30 minutes, so we will have not so much time for questions. If you have questions for the next talk, give it in the chat room, #libocon -room1, and perhaps Raphael could answer it in the chat room. But I will say it again a minute before the start of the video. See you in 5 minutes. Regis, could you mute you, please?
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, let's clarify. Raphael, are you in the room?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, there you are. So I will start the video. And if there are some questions in the chat room, please have a look at it. Okay, so let's go further. We have now 2 talks about the ScriptForge library. Perhaps you have heard of it. We are now again on the scripting side of LibreOffice. ScriptForge library was invented with LibreOffice version 7.1 and an additional version with 7.2. For Python, and this first talk about this ScriptForge library is about exactly this additional library for Python scripts. And Raphael did a pre-recorded video, and I will start it now. So if you have questions, because it's exactly 30 minutes, please do the questions in the chat room, and I hope Raphael will have a look on it and give an answer on there. So let's start the video.
Hi, my name is Rafael Lima, and in my talk today, I'm going to introduce how to use the ScriptForge library to write Python scripts in LibreOffice Calc. So the main idea in my talk is to show how we can combine the strength of LibreOffice Calc, the advantages of the Python language, and the new features added by the ScriptForge library. I'd like to point out that all examples are written using Python in this presentation, and if anyone wants to download any of the files that I show here, they are all available in my GitHub page. So what is ScriptForge? ScriptForge library is a set of services that are comprised of methods and properties that seek to make scripting easier and more accessible for LibreOffice